The meeting was held. Helpful, well done. Of course, the mood was given. The tragic news of the helicopter crash. Foreign Minister Amir Abdullahian was shot down from Azerbaijan on the border with Iran with President Raisi and other responsible officials of the government of the Islamic Republic of Iran, and meet the president halfway. This morning and at the meeting of the Council of Foreign Ministers, you expressed your most sincere condolences and expressed solidarity with the Iranian people, believing in continuity. Iran's foreign policy will be maintained, including the active participation of employees in Shanghai organizations. We actively support SIX. As you know, in the foreign policy concept approved by President Putin last March, the SCO has been designated as one of the priority areas of our activities in the international arena, and it is gratifying that the attitude towards the priority of interaction within the framework is similar. All members of the Shanghai Cooperation Organization have expressed their willingness to continue to strengthen cooperation on multilateral platforms, including ON, to develop cooperation with partners such as the Eurasian Economic Union and the ASEAN Collective Security Treaty Organization, and to continue to deepen contacts with the BRICS Association. We share the view that the SCO is still one of the pillars of the multipolar world order. It is well placed to become a driving force for transforming Eurasia into a common continental space of peace, stability, mutual trust, and development. We talked a lot about it today. We are talking about unifying the potential of all structures in this vast Eurasian space, coordinate their plans, mainly in the areas of economic development, infrastructure, and logistics, but also in the areas of security, because security can only be reliably guaranteed by the strength of the countries of the African continent themselves. Intervention outside regional forces, and we have also seen this trend from the United States, the European Union, and NATO. By the way, they actively want to take responsibility for what is happening. But if translated into simple language, it interferes with the process of the entire Eurasian continent. The western part of it, where they were crushed, was in fact completely privatized by the Organization for Security and Cooperation in Europe. NATO, the main organization that declared that everyone should obey, is taking practical steps in this direction, including waging war against us. Using the Nazi regime in Ukraine, the same applies to the eastern part of the Eurasian continent, where NATO has now openly moved a large part of its infrastructure, and NATO has built so-called small military blocks according to its model. This is also the famous Horus. This exercise is traditional within the framework of the Troika of the United States and Japan. Republic of Korea and torture. Unprecedented in scale and including a nuclear component. This is also a well-known thought, and by the way, the Democratic People's Republic of Korea has recently expressed its serious concern about these provocations against the United States and its allies in the region, actions aimed at provocation, aggravation of the situation until it enters a hot stage. We do not rule out that these plans were conceived by Washington and its satellites when it tried to provoke unrest on the Korean peninsula. But of course, If you look at other parts of the Eurasian continent, these are Central Asia, the South Caucasus, and the same Moldova, NATO members and the European Union are sheep everywhere. Led by the Americans, they are trying to introduce their structure. They are trying to subdue these countries in their order and attract them to participate in anti-Russian activities, both in terms of severing economic ties with Russia under the pretext of complying with the so-called secondary sanctions, and in terms of infiltrating the field of security and law enforcement activities. Therefore, in this case, the collective Western attempt, led by Sergei, take control of the entire Eurasian continent. They are obvious. We talked about this today, and everyone understands the need to step up our work. First of all, the Shanghai Cooperation Organization itself, considering its weight and role in Eurasian space and its partners. The CIS-DOC-B has the Eurasian Economic Union ASEAN. By the way, it is also located in Eurasia. We also believe that structures such as the Council of Arab States of the Gulf are important. Leave. The process of normalization between the Arabs and Iran is now in the hands of these countries themselves, without trying to impose any recipe from outside, but also from the Palestinians. The Israeli conflict is also because our continent. Therefore, the task of developing a common approach to ensuring Eurasian security with Eurasian cooperation, the countries of the continent themselves are very, very relevant, and we are once again. They emphasized, and I want to confirm this, the Shanghai Cooperation Organization can play a catalytic role in these processes involving other partners on the African continent. In this regard, we discussed a number of proposals on behalf of the GOP head of state. The streets are dedicated to the overall modernization of the activities of the SCO and the improvement of its structures and institutions, including providing additional impetus to the work of the Secretariat and the Regional Counterterrorism Executive Committee. The logical structure agreed to establish an integrated center to address modern challenges and threats on the basis of the regional counterterrorism structure. Within the framework of the center, he will have an information security center and an organized crime center. They will be part of this one-stop center. In addition, anti-people will be created. The Ethics Center in Dushanbe will enter into an agreement with the Center and the Global Center for addressing challenges and threats to coordinate their actions, taking into account the direct and close link between drug trafficking and the financing of terrorism. We are preparing these decisions for the leaders who will gather here in Astana for the summit in July this year. And expand our activities. Among the dialogue partners and observers, we have 2 observers and 14 dialogue partners in the SCO. 2 other countries have applied for partner status. Recently, these are Laos and Algeria, and we discussed improving the efficiency of cooperation with these countries in the form of SCO plus NA. At the SCO Uprising Summit in July this year, we will hold a separate dialogue in this form. We exchanged views on the key issues of the world situation. Everyone expressed their condolences to us on the terrorist attack on Crocus City Hall. They expressed their condolences to the death of Iranian diplomats after the Israeli attack on the Iranian consulate in Damascus. This is a serious violation of the Convention, guaranteeing the inviolability of any diplomatic and consular agency. They discussed the Middle East solution and reached a consensus that without the establishment of a Palestinian state, Israel and the United States, which support it in all its aspects, are now trying to obstruct this issue in every possible way. It is impossible to ensure stability in this region. Our Eurasian continent expressed support for the resumption of the activities of the SCO Working Contact Group. Afghanistan is a useful mechanism for sharing assessments on how to continue to normalize the situation around the country and how to continue to assist the Afghan authorities in ensuring the inclusiveness of the nation-building process, including representatives of all ethnic and political groups. The 25-year and 27-year cooperation plan for combating terrorism, separatism, and extremism, and the 24-year and 29-year anti-drug strategy of the Shanghai Cooperation Organization are being prepared for approval by the leaders of the two countries, as well as the implementation plan of this anti-drug strategy. The meeting reaffirmed the general attitude of expanding the areas of cooperation within the framework of the Shanghai Organization in the economic field and is preparing the following documents. It aims to deepen cooperation in the fields of energy, transportation, logistics, and environmental protection, international sports information security, healthcare, which is very, very important right now, and in these areas, Russia is actively promoting the achievement of practical results there, I guess. The main outcome of our meeting today, please ask questions.
Which countries are now closest to saying the number of 0.5 ton of members of the organization?
I didn't mention it, but the minister, in fact, Belarus has been involved in today's meeting from the beginning. So far, it's still so erratic. On the basis of BU, Belarus will become a full member of the Shanghai Cooperation Organization from the July summit, and President Lukashenko will participate in all activities of the Astana summit. The Belarusian minister attended our discussion without exception. At the end of the discussion, he thanked everyone for their active support for Minsk's accession to the Shanghai Cooperation Organization. As for the as I said, there are two aspects of the further expansion of this structure, the Observer Afghanistan, which I have mentioned, and Mongolia, and we, together with the People's Republic of China and other partners, believe that the obvious candidate, the next candidate to join the SCO is Mongolia. If you look at the map, it blends organically. We will encourage our Mongolian neighbors to make such a decision, and all SCO member states are clearly in favor of the other 12 countries and 14 countries. As I said, your dialogue partners have also received applications for this status from Laos and Algeria, so the process is ongoing. As our relations with these countries develop, they can already apply for membership through the status of dialogue partners, observers. I personally think that I mentioned this today, which is a somewhat cumbersome plan. So within the framework of the modernization of the SCO, the modernization of its rules and norms, we will pay attention to and need to straighten out this distance in some way. I hope we get support.
Sergei Viktorovich, did the delegation contact its Iranian colleagues on the agenda of the meeting? He said, have you given any changes in Iran's foreign and domestic policies in connection with the recent tragic events, and how this will affect us in two ways?
In other words, I have been in contact with the head of the Iranian delegation. It was the late Deputy Foreign Minister Amir who bypassed them, Mr. Safari, who confirmed the continuity of our relationship. By the way, Iran's ambassador to Moscow, Mr. Zhili, who met with President Putin and representatives of our military and rescue agencies yesterday, also confirmed that Iran's foreign policy is not expected to change, including the promotion of partnerships with all its neighbors, including the Shanghai Cooperation Organization. So I'm sincere. I see no reason to speculate on the issue of a change in the foreign policy of the Islamic Republic of Iran. On the contrary, the head of the delegation is a deputy minister who is attending the SCO meeting, he confirmed. There is a clear interest in the implementation of a series of practical energy transport projects agreed by the presidents, which are very important for the development of the Islamic Republic of Iran itself and the development of the North-South corridor.
On May 19th, Iranian President Vitaly was decorated. Well, the cause of the tragedy is still under investigation. Well, as we all know, the president and foreign minister flew 212 American helicopters. Now, since Iran is under sanctions, there is a hypothesis that the parts for the helicopter are not provided by the United States. In this case, can we say that airworthiness is maintained, and does this contribute? And in the blog, did it trigger this tragedy?
The former foreign minister of the Islamic Republic of Iran has made this point very bluntly. Javad Zarif put forward this version, accusing the United States, in fact, by imposing sanctions, including banning the supply of parts for American aviation equipment, they put lives at risk. Americans deny this, but in fact, other countries that the United States has announced sanctions against are also. There are no spare parts for American equipment, including aviation equipment, so the mantra we have been hearing from the West is that the sanctions they impose are aimed at correcting the behavior of the authorities of the countries concerned and do not affect the interests of ordinary citizens. These spells are lies, obvious outright, and once again prove that they are completely unreliable. Not the bargaining power of Western partners in any field of trade, economy, investment, and finance. It has become a parable in the tongue and appears everywhere. By the way, in terms of aviation technology and unreliability, this unreliability is manifested in the United States of America's civil aircraft. Boeing has been in constant scandal, but in this case, of course, we're talking about deliberate damage. For ordinary citizens who use vehicles, when they replace parts, it is directly related to lower security, which is why we, Ministry of Industry and Trade, other departments, they are actively and quickly replacing anyone. The parts we used obtained from the West, and now production and engines are fully established on Russian territory and all other components of our equipment.
Thanks to the recent death of Ship, including the Russian media, the view that our partners in Central Asia have become more susceptible to Western courtship is actively replicated, and it is clear what they are seeking. Usually, it does not hide this from replacing Russia's presence, including in the fields of energy and security. So in your opinion, what is the situation, and is this view avant-garde?
There is no need, but I have already said in my opening remarks how the situation in the entire Eurasian continent is developing. In the West, with Esh, their satellites were destroyed by the OCE and everything was crushed. At least they're trying to do it, and here it is. We stumbled in Ukraine because we couldn't let it be honest. In the southeast of the mainland, the United States has been warned of this, trying to heighten tensions in the Taiwan Strait, in the South China Sea, including creating NATO-like bloc military structures are also being infiltrated into daily life in Central Asia. We talked about this with our Kazakh host yesterday, and today we talked about this with the Uzbek-Tajik ministers, and we talked about it at the meeting of the Council of Foreign Ministers. Of course, when Central Asia is of interest, no one will object to the creation of a Central Asian plus exchange format. But when it comes to the United States and the European Union, these forms are used to try to enter all areas of organizing national life activities. And of course, in organizing the activities of any Central Asian country, this does not mean that the West provides equal and mutually beneficial cooperation, but tries to crush itself. These processes threaten to report on how they implement secondary sanctions. Our colleagues expressed their outrage at this rudeness and outright arrogance in their conversations with me. But there is the West, and there is the West and the East. Well, the West wants to refute Kipling, not just to meet the East and elevate the East to itself. I don't think it will work, and the Eurasian security issue I mentioned certainly involves intensification. All of us, the countries of the continent and the organizations established here, including the Shanghai Cooperation Organization, as one of the most effective mobilization to take our hands, development and order, which we must establish ourselves here.
Among Viktorovich, Russia lost its status as Kazakhstan's main trading partner at the end of last year. China's position will come, and China's cooperation with other countries in the region will develop in an orderly manner, which shows that its influence is increasing. Does Moscow see the risk in this regard and assess it?
Trend, well, we don't see risk in any natural development of things. The growth of China's economy is an objective reality, and it is not only the largest economy in the Shanghai Cooperation Organization, but also the largest economy in the world. If we take purchasing power parity as an example, it is clear that China's economic growth has been stable for many years, which ensures that China actively participates in international trade. The volume of mutually beneficial trade within the framework of the Shanghai Cooperation Organization is also increasing for us. But a profitable process, but trade alone, because cooperation is not exhaustive. We must consider investment projects and attract investment projects. In the context of investment activities, we should also pay attention to projects aimed at localizing production. Therefore, I would like to emphasize once again that the overall comprehensive nature of our economic partnership is beneficial to all participants, including the Russian Federation.
The continuation of the first two questions at the expert level shows that the West is trying to turn Kazakhstan into a conforming federal wall. So you're in this country every day, and in your opinion, has the West at least started construction?
I don't know who's disseminating the grades. We know that the West likes to build curtain walls and iron walls. A physical wall is being built. In my opinion, between Finland and the Scandinavian countries, Estonia wants to build a physical wall on its border with us. It's a reflection. You know a little. Duma, actually. This is a reflection of the tasks you set for yourself. The collective West, led by the United States, controls as much space as possible on the world stage, including the Eurasian continent, by means of blackmail and threats of sanctions. And an ultimatum. I don't feel any alienation from Russia by our Kazakhs and all other participants in the Shanghai Foreign Ministers meeting. On the contrary, I also met with the President of Kazakhstan yesterday, who very clearly confirmed his focus on implementing all agreements. This has been and will be achieved between him and the President of the Russian Federation. So,
Российской Федерации. Так что выдавать желаемое за действительное – это известная манера Запада.
It is a well-known Western way to pretend that what you want is really a well-known way, no matter what the child is happy as long as he does not cry. Here's another question.
Thank you, Sergei Viktorovich. Last time I spoke to a girl. In your opinion, China's initiative to Ukraine may make it a real alternative to Zelensky's reform in the West?
Well, we've commented on the Chinese initiative. This initiative follows such a dialectical logic from public to private. What's the point? Above all, it means the need to figure out the first reasons. Ukraine is in the hands of Ukraine, and the West has decided to undermine Russia's legitimate interests. China's initiative assumes review the root causes and reach an agreement to eliminate these causes, eliminate them through. It is impossible to agree that the principle of equal and indivisible security can be ensured in practice when the security of all countries concerned is equally guaranteed. This is a very clear reflection of the analysis made by the Chinese side recently. In addition to these 12 points, President discussed with Macron during his stay in France at the initiative of the French side.
Предстоящие планируемые мероприятия, конференции в Швейцарии и прочие.
The upcoming planned activities of the Swiss conference and other actions around the so-called Zelensky formula. He made it clear that China will support the convening of an international conference to reflect. Equally interests Russia and Ukraine, and will rely on a wide range of proposals. And initiatives and Swiss. The meeting was held solely to discuss Zelensky's formula in the form of an ultimatum. It is no coincidence that the Swiss themselves, including DEP, Swiss Mets, they said the meeting was not going to be about anything. And Bridges to Peace about supporting Ukraine. Yes, Barrel said the peace formula was the only initiative under discussion. As he said, you disappeared a few weeks ago, and other proposals, in addition to China, also came from African countries, Brazil, the Arab League. Well, finally, we have information. We have the opportunity to obtain information that is not normally intended for publication at the end of April. Discussed by foreign ambassadors in Kiev, this is the idea of the Swiss conference. According to some participants, Zelensky spent most of his time improvising in chaos. In a raised, almost hysterical tone, he demanded support for his peace formula. How to bring Russia to its knees. Here's the man when he doesn't feel the need to control himself. He's telling the truth. That's why now he is under pressure to come to Switzerland and create extras to participate. This family photo, in order to talk about the widespread support for Zelensky's formula later. They have to understand where they are being lured. They are lured to support the ultimatum he will give to Russia later. Well, it's funny, President Putin just talked about it. Of course, these games have nothing to do with diplomacy, just as other foreign policy steps of our Western partners have lost their diplomatic skills. Thank you very much.